which leads to a few more observations and messages. You've got here a very successful EP, which is managed by a non-EAZA association. So I think one obvious conclusion, and many people said that in the session yesterday, the rhinoceros, you needed to look to Asia for space, funding, and eventually know-how. I think EAZA and the EPs need to think outside of the box. There could be very valid contributions from non-EAZA members to a certain EP. This means that maybe you need to be flexible in your criteria in terms of the internal processes and so on. ZIMs, RCPs, long-term management plans, that scares the hell out of me. I'm not EAZA. Why should I spend the resources in ZIM? We've got our own database. I see the point, but let's discuss. And I can tell you this flexibility is two ways. Many zoos have got flight shows. And I can tell you that within my constituency, vulture conservationists, flight shows are the devil. If we are very strict about flight shows, we would reduce immensely the number of zoos with whom we can work with, because flight shows are very popular in Europe. So we had to find a compromise solution. And the compromise solution we found is that I convinced my constituency that we would accept flight shows, but not with birded vultures, because this is our target species. So we work with zoos within the birded vulture EP, many of them EAZA members, that have got flight shows, but we would not work with a zoo that would have a flight show with birded vultures, because we believe that birded vultures should really be used for captive breeding, for reintroduction. Two ways. We had to compromise. And maybe I'm telling you more than I should about the VCF, but hey, I don't think there is such thing as a free lunch, and I believe that the EAZA is paying my lunch later on, so I'm giving you some information. So, I mean, in a nutshell, I think you need to open up to the outside world. External partners might have the animals. We have the animals in the case of the birded vulture. Lots of private breeders of pheasants have got most of the stock of some species which have got an EEP. Partners may have the know-how, partners may have the constituency that you want to reach, partners may have the funding or the lobbying. And I'm almost finishing. Thomas mentioned the EU biodiversity strategy. Yes, it does not mention ex situ. We have coordinated two very important documents, the development of the Multi-Species Action Plan to conserve African Eurasian vultures as part of the CMS, and the International European Action Plan for the birded vulture, which was eventually adopted by the European Union. And because we work with you and we value captive breeding, we have included in these two documents some ex situ as one of the priorities for development and work. If these two documents were developed by maybe some other conservation organization which has got little contact or even some obstacles to work with zoos, I am sure that we would arrive at the same situation as with the EU biodiversity strategy, where ex situ would be completely absent. Final message. EEPs serve many functions. We've heard some fantastic examples, genetic reserve, research. This morning I was, because it was in this room, I was listening to the elephant tag meeting and wonderful examples of research, education and contribution to in situ conservation. However, I think that for obvious reasons, because it's expensive, it's difficult, because you might not have the partnership to do so, this contribution to in situ conservation in terms of direct reintroduction and restocking has been, at least in my perspective and in many conservationists' perspective, the least achieved of the EEP general objectives. And what I would like to leave you, what I would like to argue, and this is of course an external opinion, is that this is probably the most important function of EEPs. Obviously, it's not possible to reintroduce or restock every single species tomorrow, but I think EAZA needs to have in the portfolio, in the EEP portfolio, several examples of successful reintroduction and restocking projects. for your own funding, for your own credibility, and for your own leverage, so that the next biodiversity strategy includes ex situ as a very important priority. I talked about funding. I would like just to have 2 slides on life. Life is is our lifeline, is the lifeline, and is my life because I spend all my life in life steering committee meetings, projects. But life is the European Union budget line that funds and implements funds the implementation of the EU biodiversity strategy. At the moment, we are involved in 7 life projects with the 4 species across Europe. We are partners with this. In some of these projects, we are actually funding captive breeding. We are funding the construction of new aviaries, like in Valcallent, a captive breeding station that we have in Catalonia. We are funding transports of animals, of birded vultures in this case, and we even are funding some management costs, some of the salary of Alex Llopis. We managed to include it in this life funding. But only because there is a direct and tangible link, and Life asked us many times about this, between captive breeding and reintroduction. We were able to prove to them that we were doing captive breeding and we were releasing, if not bird a bird in this site, changing the status of the species. So having more reintroduction and restocking also opens up the possibility of you accessing life funding for your own EPs. Conclusions. I think there's lots of potential for collaboration with external organizations. I think it is necessary for you. This is my recommendations, notably with conservation organizations. This is, we all know this, but I think it merits to be said and written. I think a targeted focus on successful reintroductions is a must. I think the in situ part of the story, you need a lot more investment in situ part of the story, and for that you need to make the bridge with conservation organizations and enlarge your constituency. Maybe for this, because reintroductions and restockings cannot live with 5 birds. You need 50 over a period of time. Specialized breeding centers is key, so building a stock, a critical mass within a few zoos or wherever, where you can centrally manage and very and target and then reintroduce is very important. And then vultures in Europe, the birded vulture EP in particular is really a wonderful wildlife comeback story, which is your story too. I cannot end without thanking, well, all the EP, all the 28 zoos that are in the EP, and in particular these ones, and some of them are non-EAZA zoos, but many of them are EAZA zoos that actually do every year a voluntary small or medium contribution. Overall, we get maybe 30,000 euros from these partners to the VCF, which is really important for the continuation of this effort. And if you want to donate, I'll be waiting for you outside after this session ends. Do follow our news, and I thank you for your attention and for the invitation. Thank you.
José, thank you very much for stopping by. We know that you are very busy between your projects, so thanks for finding the time to stop by in Valencia and for, well, exposing yourself to the risk of receiving even more emails with ideas for collaboration. I suggest that you please keep your questions for José until after the next presentations so that we can have a short Q&A sessions afterwards. Moving from the soaring journey among vultures to the national associations, based on the context that I sketched up at the beginning, there are several ways to look at our national associations, and I would like us to literally look at them. So if I could ask for the next slide to come up, please. So one way to look at the national associations is vulture's eye view on the map of Europe. And by the way, I think we don't pay enough attention to the interesting logos of the national associations. So they span from the UK and Ireland to Romania and from Portugal to Sweden. They cover many crucial countries in Europe. These 13, come together as the National Associations Committee in EAZA. So another way to look at them is through the work of that committee that's chaired by Volker from VDZ and since yesterday, vice-chaired by Lisette de Raak from the Dutch Zoo Federation. It is a big pleasure for me to be working with that committee on behalf of the EAZA office. But I'd like to propose a third way to look at our national associations. Of course, they all remain separate organizations. They all keep their own structures, their own accreditation mechanisms, their own partnerships, their own campaigns. But they, crucially, also amplify the mission of the EAZA community at the local level. We all play together on the same side, advancing the role of modern zoos and aquariums as amazing and unique spaces for visitor recreation and relaxation, but also as important actors in education, in research, and, crucially, in conservation. I know this graphic is not state-of-the-art, but the collaboration is. And on this background, I would like to invite our next speakers, starting with NVD, the Dutch Zoo Federation, which was praised in the evaluation of the Zoos Directive for its system of accrediting members. So I'd like to ask Patricia, who works at the NVD office and manages the accreditation process, to tell us more about it. Patricia, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Am I doing it correctly? No. There we go. There we go. Good morning, everyone. Do you recognize this picture? It's from a publication of National Geographic. This is how the world also looks at zoos. We have to help each other raise our standards. Let's be better together. I would like to talk to you today about one of the ways our zoos, the zoos of our association, work towards becoming better, and that's our accreditation system, our screenings. At the Dutch Zoo Association, I organize, take part in, and write reports on these screenings. What I would love for you to take away from my presentation is my enthusiasm about it, my belief in the strength of them. Hopefully, I can impart some of this enthusiasm onto you so that you can go home and think, that's what I want. So what do? Every 3 years, a zoo is screened by a screening team consisting of experts, mostly curators, but sometimes veterinarians and as such. Decisions on which members take part in these accreditations are made on the collection of the zoo. So for example, if a zoo has an aquarium, you will need a fish expert. The basis of these screenings are our screening checklists. They are sent to the zoo before the screening takes place. The zoo fills it in, sends it back to us, and we use it during the screening process. The screening takes 1 full day in which we try to really look around at the zoo, see everything, see all the behind-the-screens facilities, and talk to the people who work at the zoo. After the screening, I write up a report together with my screening team and send this to the zoo. A summary of this report is sent to our government, one of the important ways for us to show what we do to improve our quality. So what do we focus on? We focus on welfare, safety, and education. These are not easy topics. They are hard to define. What exactly is welfare, for example? But also, what are the criteria? How can we measure them? As I've learned from the Animal Welfare Assessment Workshop this week, we've worked with 2 different screening checklists. And those were already different, and there are many more available. It's hard to see one way of doing an assessment on welfare. Then there's safety. It's harder to assess safety in an exhibit which is a walkthrough exhibit or with natural barriers than there is with an exhibit with a glass wand between visitors and animals. Education. There are many ways to get a message across, but what is the best way? Is there a best way? I think I went, yeah. So why do we do it? Well, we really want to help each other improve. We want to gain expert advice. It's so valuable to have somebody outside of your own zoo, but with the same level of expertise, come into your zoo and look at it and give you their advice. Let's take a fresh look at your own zoo. When a group of people is coming in, other experts, you will go around the zoo with them and you will look differently at your own zoo than when you go about your daily walk and do this alone. Also, these other people who come to the zoo, they will look with different eyes at your zoo than yourself. And of course, we want to be the best among the best. So what do we achieve? Fulfilling requirements set out by the zoo's directive and national legislation. Furthering quality beyond legislation and standards. Discussion about these topics between experts. For example, there are many species for which we don't have standards yet. It's important to keep talking about these species. Collaboration on improvement between zoos. It doesn't end on the screening day. Many people will reach out to each other and ask for advice. Even EAZA colleagues will be asked for advice. Maintaining and improving standing with the government and visitors and general public. Learning and improving. It's so, you can learn so much when you talk with people that have the same passion and expertise as you. And of course, we want to have fun. It's great, as I said, to talk with people and spend the day with them on their zoo, on those animals that we all love. What are the challenges? Well, one of the challenges is objectivity versus subjectivity, so fact versus opinion. Definitions, as I said, it's hard to measure criteria. Support and involvement from all layers of the organization of the zoo. As I said, we have mainly curators doing the screenings, but you need involvement from both keepers to directors. Discussions between experts. Availability of experts. As I said, we all have fun with these screenings, but it's hard. You know, I've yet to meet a screener who say, I won't do it. They would love to do it, but then they have to draw out the calendars and actually pick a date with me, and that is difficult. Keeping up with research findings and implementing these into the screenings, we have to keep up to date. And then, of course, time. There's never enough time on a day to see everything and to know everything and to learn everything. So how do we tackle these challenges? Well, we have to evaluate the system. Just like our zoos are growing ever more, we need to have the system grow ever more as well. We're also currently revising the screening checklist. We have to make it more complete. We have to make it more clear so that the zoo finds it easier to use, and it's easier to use during the screening process. Then we're also looking into incorporating the 5 domains of animal welfare as a means of making that more measurable, as well as we had a consult with our safety working group on the safety definition and measurability. It is also very valuable to have a self-evaluation within the zoo before we actually screen them. When the zoo also already looks at its own facilities and animals, and we come in then to see it, it can really deepen the whole process. We have to make a connection with research. As I said, those experts, they can discuss endlessly. And it's hard to find an answer. So if we can link those questions that we still have with research, then maybe we can find the answers. And then we are looking into having multidisciplinary teams, so maybe include directors. Well, I just really want to say that I'm proud to stand here for our Dutch zoos, and I'm proud of their quality. For these zoos too, the move towards being better never ends. We have to help each other raise our standards. Let's not just be better, let's be better together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Over to Volker, the CEO of the German-speaking Zoo Association and the chair of the National Associations Committee, to talk about the links between ex situ and in situ that VDZ is creating and providing. Over to
you. Thank you, Tomasz. So, good morning, everyone. I think this is actually what it's all about. It's biodiversity. We are conserving it in situ. We are conserving it ex situ. As José was saying, we should build more relations to in situ, of course. This is what we are doing. And I tried to bring you now an example that we see. It could be a role model. It could be something that inspires you. So we are doing something from VDZ together with a foundation called Stiftung Artenschutz, and we try to build a direct bridge and living the one plan approach with these two organizations. And we are just starting this journey. So providing life to the one plan approach is a win-win situation. And Stiftung Artenschutz, translated to English language, is then Species Conservation Foundation. And this brings two worlds together, which is the 71 member zoos, German-speaking, from Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and Spain. And we are a strong pillar of EAZA in ex situ and in situ conservation. And we're working under the framework of the EU Zoo Directive, which is then conservation, education, and science. And what does Stiftung Artenschutz, the Species Conservation Foundation, bring to the table? It exists since the year 2000. It's invented and hosted formally in Allwetter zur Münster in Germany. Many of you may know this foundation already. It was planned as a consortium of conservation NGOs and zoos to do species conservation. And in statutes says it concentrates on the conservation of highly endangered but less known species. How does the conservation landscape globally look like, very, very roughly saying? Zoos are globally one of the last remaining species conservation hubs in all organizations, being it governmental or non-governmental NGOs. We heard one example this morning, a species conservation organization, Vulture Conservation Fund. Big organizations like Conservation International, WWF, FFI are addressing other root causes for biodiversity crisis than they did 20 years ago. This has good reason. They address consumer choice, they address financial flows, they address climate, water, these kind of things, but not so much species conservation. And zoos, so this is a unique selling point, as no institution has so much knowledge on species as we have. Since 2018, so these are formal details, I'm quickly go over this. Since 2018, we have a formal contract between VDZ and Stiftung Artenschutz The board is filled with 50% members of VDZ and 50% of other and conservation NGOs. It's co-hosted within the same office as VDZ in the center of Berlin. It's very small currently, less than 1.5 per staff time. And we seek strong collaboration with other organizations. And you know ZGAP, Zoological Society for the Conservation of Species and Populations. And this organization, of course, many of you know, was the root, there were the roots for the Stiftung Artenschutz. So why building partnerships for nature? What are the benefits? The EU Zoo Directive requires all the zoos to do conservation, education and science. Smaller zoos may prove in situ conservation via the Stiftung Artenschutz and provide funding to it. And we have, in Germany at least, a statistical solid proof that the German public would like us zoos to do conservation work and to do this conservation work as well in nature. And this was done by FORSA and commissioned by VDZ in 2017. So not only our visitors, but the general public would like us to do conservation. Some selected projects, and I don't want to go, or I don't have the time to go in detail in these, and some of you may know on that. The conservation of northern yellow-cheeked crested gibbon in Vietnam is one of the first examples of the organization. Only some hundreds may be left in the wild, so it's listed in the IUCN Red List as endangered. The aim is more protected areas, better protection, engaging people. And we looked for major conservation partners that are already there. Fauna Flora International and Frankfurt Zoological Society. Second project is the Madagascar Sacred Ibis. The population survey on the ground is financed on that partly. Status of the population and the habitat and the driving forces for threat. So this species as well is listed as endangered. Partners are, amongst others, Chances for Nature, the DPZ in Germany or Berlin Zoo. And the third project that I would like to raise is with the Katbar Langur. It's one of the oldest projects of the Stiftung. Critically endangered species, less than 100 individuals. Threat, amongst others, are through development projects. And lead partner at the moment is Leipzig Zoo. The future of the collaboration, how may it look like? VDZ and Stiftung Artenschutz will establish a species conservation working group, so we work together. There's a first meeting end of October, planned in Frankfurt Zoo. We would like to build more synergies between the VDZ zoos, but not limited to that, and the Stiftung Artenschutz. We would like to harmonize in situ and ex situ conservation for selected projects. Still selected, it's a small organization. And we fine-tune the program of Stiftung Artenschutz with projects where many zoos can profit from. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Volker. Among the national associations, BIAZA, the British and Irish Association of Zoos and Aquariums, has a particularly strong reputation for being a research stronghold. So I would like to ask John Pullen to confirm that stereotype. And John is kindly stepping in for Madelon Willemsen, the CEO of BIAZA, who unfortunately had to leave earlier for personal reasons. So all the more thanks to you, John. Over to you.
Okay. So, as already mentioned, I am not Madelon, I am John, so I will do the best I can in presenting this presentation to you. So, zoos and aquariums, not surprisingly, are seen by researchers and our staff as great settings to engage in applied and fundamental research of wild animals, veterinary inquiries, conservation science, social science, etc. Enabling this research by often external partners, students, provides a wealth of information for us to adjust the way we work and demonstrates the evidence-based approach zoos and aquariums integrate in all their efforts for looking after their animals, ensuring great visitor experience and ex situ and in situ conservation. The research support application process was set up by EAZA's research committee, as we receive a lot of requests for research, and especially for the organisations who do not have a research unit or a dedicated staff for research, and the organisations we are missing out on valuable research opportunities. So in 2014, the research support application process was initiated to make sure institutional research is reviewed and quality and methodology is sound and enables zoos that don't have in-house research departments to facilitate research within their collection. This process is supported by the BIAZA handbook and the BIAZA handbook of zoo and aquarium research, and also has a dedicated web page on the BIAZA website. Within a research support application process with a research support application process is placed, it becomes possible for zoos and aquaria to direct interested parties, students, to the BIAZA website, where all information is available and application forms. The BIAZA office administrates the support application process, checks applications, form is completed correctly before it forwards it to the individuals of a research committee. The research committee evaluates the application by email in most cases with the following assessment criteria. Sometimes they ask for further clarification before the project is approved. Once the committee has reached a decision, a letter of support or decline of support is sent out. If the project is denied, the student will receive feedback on the reasons for denying the support. When the committee approves the application, an agreement is signed and a report from the outcomes of the project is required after 1 year. The process is an efficient tool for our members to manage the opportunities for research. So, the Research Committee has reviewed on 182 applications, of which they have approved 98, which is the 54%, and have denied 69, the 38%. And then 15 applications were deemed not relevant to zoos and aquaria research for a number of other reasons. Since the BIAZA office only checks if the form is filled out correctly, it is the Research Committee that will see the applications which are not relevant to the zoos and aquaria. When the applications are denied, it can be a variety of grounds, from poor methodology to a number of other reasons. A wide number of qualifications are involved in applying for research support. Masters and undergraduates, as you can see, take up a third each of this, but there are also PhDs at 18%, and postdoctorates often have longer projects as well. Mammals are, not surprisingly, the largest on focus of research. They're generally the most visible, and so they tend to get the attention. And we have no applications have come through so far for plants and inverts. With inverts is a little more surprising, but plants, there might be that people are going elsewhere to look for this information. It is interesting to see that researchers also see zoos and aquariums as a good place to look for educational and other social science research, and you can see that by the 9%. So opportunities. The process has been in place for 5 years, and the research committee has identified opportunities to further improve the process and enhance the relevance of the research to our members and enable improved communication of the research outcomes. These are just a few examples of the research committee wants to continue to develop guidance documents. The research handbook is in place, but it is in need of review. There are opportunities to align with the university's ethical approach processes for research with ours, as some organisations do not have any internal processes in place. We need to be better at following research outputs for any research done within our members. We have a list, but it is not complete. We want to develop a list of research projects so that we can guide applicants towards urgently needed research within our organisations and possibly start driving research agendas of collaborative universities. The research committee is powering along with established sound research processes within BIAZA. They engage and nurture important external relationships for the benefits of our animals and zoo business, such as the Great Ape Welfare Group. They play a critical role in providing the evidence for our development and a review of our policies. And they hold the largest annual the research committee hold the largest annual conference of our BIAZA conferences, with over 120 people attending last year. So evidence-based approaches is definitely the way forward with this, and this is the end of our presentation. Thank you. Sorry, it's a bit broken, but there we go. Sorry.
Thank you very much, John. I would like to introduce the last speaker with a sense of personal pride and gratitude. It was on the grounds of the Union of Czech and Slovak Zoos that my interest in the zoo world and in EAZA was nurtured years ago when I was a student. So I'd like to invite Erich Koczner, who is the president of UCS Zoo and the director of Košice Zoo in Slovakia, to tell us more about the UCS Zoo and how it functions. Erich, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you. So, good late morning, dear colleagues. I apologize, I am a little bit ill, so maybe you can understand me. Union of Czech and Slovak Zoos was established in year 1999, in the time when the formerly Czechoslovakia started this separation to the two states, and in this really bad years, our colleagues started this new Union of Czech and Slovak Zoos. Maybe you know that Czech and Slovak language are very similar, so after the separation we stay as one federation or union, and until yet we are in very good contact, very good cooperation. Formerly seat of the other union was in Jihlava, sometimes in Prague. Last 4 years we seat in Brno Zoo. We have a president, vice president, and EAZA council from 3 persons. Each 3 years there are new elections. We have 20 members, 16 Czech and 4 Slovak zoos. Each 1 year we have a general meeting, and our goals are to help to achieve the mission of the zoos, to help to improve zoos through mutual cooperation, to help to provide foraging experience, to act towards public and businesses subject The union authorities in Union Czech and Slovak Zoos is a general meeting, is highest union body, once a year, assembled by council. We approve the statutes and their changes. We approve the report of council, president and secretary about the economic activities of our members and our federation. We determine the membership fee and approve the budget. We vote the president, vice president and council as I saw one time per 3 years. And sometimes we approve new members. Actually, you can see that we are 5 persons. We lead or manage the union activities between general meetings. We sit 2-3 times per year. We ensure the fulfillment of general meetings resolutions. We approve and change rules of procedure of council. Also, we name the office director if we have person and union secretary. We prepare the report about union activities and economic activities, and we prepare the session of general meetings. President of our union is also the council chair. He represents union and acts in its name. Fulfills the functions of council in the period between the meetings, except some points of status, but must inform council of the next meeting, and it can change its decisions. You can see all our members zoo. The last one, Zoo Chleby, is the first private zoo. They stay as member of our union, I think 3 years ago. What is very maybe important for you that since at the beginning in our union working the committees for group of animals or species. Very important are the groups for the animal evidence. We have, for example, technical group, economy meetings. They are 2 years, 2 times by year. Last committee was established was the Zoological Legislative Committee. Our union is association member of EAZA and VAZA and member of IUCN. And we, as Union Czech and Slovak Zoos, support, for example, of the projects, financial and personal. The most important from last year is the Save the Saola, Hope for Northern White Rhino, project Kura Kura for our member Zoo Liberec was one of the hit organizers the last EAZA campaign, Silent Forest campaign, and actually we prepare a very nice project for the manless zebra rescue. Our union has a Facebook. This is the official website, Facebook, and each 1 year we issue the annual reports with many information about each one members zoo, about the committee groups, about the economy situation, about the in situ and ex situ projects, etc., etc. What is maybe interest for you? Our committee groups have each 1 year issued the committee compilations. We can see as yearbook of the each one committee group. Many years practically we can see since year 1973 Prague Zoo prepared each 1 year yearbooks with compilation or complete compilation of all animals. They are living in our zoos with numbers of reproduced or young birds died, and this was really very important for our work many years ago, but is still one of the most popular book for our zoologists. We have one very nice action, and this is the name is Bílý slon, so white elephant. You can see Oscar for the zoos is prepared with private association. The name is Czech Zoo, and each 1 year we have prizes for the best offspring or breeding of the year in category mammals, birds, reptiles, and others. A special prize for the best new building and a special prize for the best reconstruction of the year. It's very nice. Sometimes meet with media, with televisions, and it's a really nice honor day for our people. I thank you for your attention. We have some projects, or our members who have some projects with in situ and ex situ activities. Maybe in future we can prepare a presentation about that. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eric. I'd like to invite all the speakers to come to the podium for a Q&A session. And with them, I also would like to ask Lisette de Raag, yesterday appointed as the Vice Chair of the National Associations Committee, to be part of the Q&A. Thank you. And I will make full advantage of the fact that I hold the microphone, and I'll take the liberty of asking the first question. José, in the talks we heard earlier during the conference, it's clear that the world is planning the next biodiversity framework for 2030, but with an outlook to 2050. And from your perspective, what do you think should be our thinking in that time frame? When we know that vultures specifically are so endangered in Africa and Asia, should we plan already to build on the successes of the European projects to think about replicating them in those continents?
Yes, indeed. I know that the efforts have already started in Asia, where there's been the first captive bred, mostly by UK institutions, captive bred and releasing, and also in India, where a number of captive breeding centers have been built and managed by the Indian government. So they've already started to experiment on that. And we are supporting our South African colleagues to start an incipient captive breeding program for the birded vulture, the different subspecies, but declining very fast in South Africa. And without any doubt, it will need at some point eventually some restocking and or reintroduction into areas where it went locally extinct. And the same is true probably for a number of African species, which are now critically endangered. I think that zoos should start thinking about, this is not, captive breeding is not the only conservation strategy in a conservation program. Mitigating the threats is equally or even more important. But if you do mitigate and reduce the threats in areas where vultures went extinct, or have got very small populations, reintroduction and restocking is a very valid conservation approach, and that's one where you have got a direct role. And without any doubt, I would encourage zoos to look into African vulture species, and to look into the short and medium term. That's another message. You cannot wait for 50 years before you see the first results, otherwise you miss the train. Try to invest in species and in strategies, in programs where you can maybe reintroduce a sufficient critical mass of individuals in a relatively short time span to be able to say in 10, 20 years' time, that's it, we are having an impact. And for that you might need to rethink a little bit some of your EEP strategies and build up those captive breeding specialized units within the EEP where you've got a big enough number of birds that will allow for that, birds or animals for that matter, that will allow for that relatively fast, proactive management and impact on the ground. But yeah, African vultures, would be a priority, and I would really encourage zoos to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I will now turn to Lisette and Volker. We spoke about the individual national associations, but why is it actually important that they also come together as the NAC?
Okay, thanks, Tomasz. I think there's a reason why national associations have been invented, and that was primary, I think, for serving, of course, the zoo community. That was one of the first reasons that we have a harmonized process between and standards and everything for the zoos. And there's a big benefit in collaboration and in working together. This is an internal reason. But then the national associations, and particularly EAZA, some years ago realized we need to do a lot more on the outside world, because we don't have only friends there. We need closer friendships with our friends, but there are others out there which may not be our friends immediately. And so something like addressing a national associations committee was the right step to do, so that we have a harmonized approach between the member states, or between the member states of the European Union, for example, but with the national associations in general. And I think in EAZA, we have now more than 40 countries, so we need to talk to each other, we need to learn from each other. And the second very important reason from my point of view is that we are talking to decision makers in many fora. And this is, for EAZA, of course, primary forum is the EU, which is then the EU Commission, which makes decisions, with the EU Parliament, but the EU member states as well. So we need strong national associations. This is my wish for the future, that we have strong national associations talking to their ministries, talking to their politicians, and that we work together. And I often compare what is the National Associations Committee for EAZA. You can see it as the foreign ministry for EAZA. So what we are doing there, we are talking about issues, we are talking about topics, we are wiring it to politicians, but we get feedback. And so within the NAC, within the National Associations Committee, we try to sort things out, collaborate with other committees within EAZA, and then bring it back to the politicians.
Thank you, Minister. Lisette, would you like to add something?
Thank you. Welcome. Yeah. That's the destiny of the Vice Chair. I can give some additional information. First, I totally agree with you. The lobby work is very important. We can reach directly our national policymakers, and it's very important that we talk, that we bring them the same message. And so that's, in that way, it's very necessary that we work together. Other important point, I think, and I think it might grow, is communication. One of the main tasks of the national associations is communication when it goes about topics like why do zoos exist, or there are questions from the press, not directly for one zoo, but overall the zoos. We have to communicate. And I think in Europe it's very important that we bring the same message, and therefore we can work together in the national associations, but we need to have our own tone of voice. If I bring the message in the Netherlands, it's a total different message than when Volker brings the message in Germany. You all know Dutch people are very directly, very clear, and that's not the way, I think, in Germany. So we have to work together. So, yeah.
Thank you. I would suggest that we shift the spotlight from the podium to the audience for a while. Would you have questions to our panelists, please?
Hola. Yes. Okay, so I'm speaking of the CITES officials of the Czech Republic, and I would like to express our pleasure from collaboration with the Union of the Czech and Slovak Zoos, because more than 10 years we are in a close connection with many zoologists from the Czech zoos, and this is a very useful tool for us, because we have a possibility to discuss some hard cases of import, of export of endangered species, and this is really very useful tool for us. So I would like to thank the Union of the Czech and Slovak Zoos for this collaboration and partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Eric, would you like to comment on that?
Thank you for the nice words. One information plus that we are two republics. One of our members' zoo is state zoo. Owner is Ministry for Environment of Slovak Republic. You know that it's Bojnica Zoo, and this is the zoo in cooperation with our government. The zoo or operated with the situ center for Slovakia. So our colleague have not only the collection and projects for ex situ or in situ, but they are in very hard contact with our ministry or CITES authorities and they have capacity for many confiscated animals, and what is in Slovakia as a specialty, they have a rescue center for the European carnivores. You know that Slovakia is full of the brown bears last years. So plus they have a really good contact with, I think, 15 rescue stations in around all country, and they are coordinated for the next work with the vet authorities. They have some technical possibilities for operating in the all around all country. So this is maybe that is maybe not so often that one zoo work. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other questions coming from the audience?
Not direct a question, but more a remark. My name is Mario Hoedemaker. I am Senior Zoo Advisor from Amersfoort Zoo. But what you see at the moment, we have a kind of status zoos. We have 144 million visitors, and we're doing a very good job. And sometimes we had to do some things what not everybody wants what we to do. But I believe that we must be very strong, that we are the professionals, we believe in what we do, and sometimes we listen too much to a few guys with a very big mouth, and they are not the professionals. So I want to make a statement that we believe in ourselves, and sometimes it's not necessary to hide ourselves.
Thank you very much, Mario. There was talk about hope in one of the presentations. I think this goes along the lines, and definitely this is one of the biggest pleasures of representing EAZA in Brussels, that we speak for a community that is science-based, evidence-based, and is full of good practice that we can showcase to also inspire those that are less well-oriented in these good practices. Non-member zoos, also thinking about other parts of Europe, countries in the European Union that joined recently where the system of licensing is not yet that well developed, but also countries outside the EU that are looking to this community as a source of guidance. And this is formalized in EAZA through the candidate for membership process and the mentoring that happens through it. And then this can be replicated and multiplied in so many other instances. Thank you so much. Other questions? If not, I will again make advantage of holding the microphone. Sorry, Danny.
Yes, sorry, Thomas, another Dutchman, a rude Dutchman asking direct questions. But I try to be as polite as I can. I have one comment and one question. The comment is to José's presentation. I really appreciated your presentation. There's lots of good examples in there, and it's just really good to see that zoos have been part of the success of your program right from the beginning until today. I also very much appreciate that you put some pointers in there for further discussion or for thought, because that's how you learn, that's how you can have a dialogue, and that's how you improve. I very much take on board your point about communication, although I'm perfectly fine with cute Flemish accents in videos, but there's lots of potential in there. What I also very much like is if somebody asks or puts a critical point out and we can give an answer and saying, actually, we have already addressed it. In terms of your focus on the EP structure, EAZA has gone through a process of rethinking our structure, and our new process is very much aligned of what you just explained in your presentation. It's opening up, it's not having sort of an inward focused, but looking across the spectrum of what is needed for species conservation to do exactly what you described is the right model. So that's what my comment that I wanted to make. My question is for the Dutch Zoo Association, to Patricia or Lisette, where you presented on the accreditation system for the Dutch Zoo Association. Congratulations of being sort of name-checked is a good example, and the Zoos Directive Analysis, that makes me as a Dutchman very proud. But my question is, with EAZA also having an accreditation system, what do you see the added benefit in addition to that for your Dutch Zoo Association accreditation system? Thank you.
There are some benefits. First is that we do it more often. So each 3 years we do the accreditation, and of course we know each other very, very well. So we visit our zoos, all the zoos, very regularly, and I think that's one of the main benefits. It's discussion within the Netherlands as well. Some zoos ask us why, what do we extra, and so we have had a lot of discussion about that, but we really want to be the best. So it's very necessary to make each other enthusiastic and to make it better and better and better. And what for us, it's also very important, I think I already said it one of these days, is that it must feel good what you are doing. And Mario already expressed very well, we have to be proud of ourselves, but then we also must have the feeling that we are doing well. And then it's very important to have the peer review. And we do the animals, we do the education. Well, Patricia told everything. And yeah, it helps a lot to talk about your zoo, to walk around, to have a peer review. And that's really additional. And we have the same culture. And there's a big difference when people from other countries come to your zoo. The difference in culture is very big. So we have, we want to reach the same level. And our goal is not becoming all the same, but higher the level of all our members.
So a follow-up question, because working with Dutch colleagues also teaches me to ask direct questions. Are you strict in your accreditation?
So we have this system where we have reports. I told about that in my presentation. And in these reports, we have points for zoos to follow up on. And these have different scales, these points. So these will range from recommendations to obligations with different time spans to carry out the point. And but it's important, you know, we keep in open communication with the zoos about this. This is a process, and we keep each other informed about the entire process that's involved.
Thank you. José?
Linking these comments with yours, thank you for your comments. There are challenges, though, in that opening up to the outside world. The devil's in the detail, and I was wondering, I am sure that if you applied your accreditation system to some of our EEP partners, they would fail. Yet, they are doing a great job in producing birded vultures for conservation purposes with the methods that are required to have birds that can be reintroduced to the wild and that behave like wild birds. So there are definitely challenges in the sense that some of our non-EAZA partners and eventually even some of our captive breeding centers may not fulfill all, for example, the requirements and the grid that you apply in your national association or more widely in EAZA. There are solutions to this as well, but there are challenges, and of course we need to keep progressing and discussing and talking all together in order to solve this.
Thank you. I will look at Sandrine, our social media guru in the office, whether there are any questions coming from the Facebook viewers.
Hello, Danny. Hello, Tomasz. Hi. It's not a question, it's just a comment from Leah Hosting, saying that we have to listen to professionals who are evidence-based, as you said before. So I don't know if you want to discuss more about that or not. Otherwise, please, followers, ask your questions. Don't be shy.
Thanks, Sandrine. Any comments immediately? If not, any other questions from the others? Please.
Thank you very much. It's not so much a question, but more to make a comment to José's talk. First, really very thankful for good words, what you said about Estonia and Tallinn's work. It was just very nice collaboration, and definitely ready to do it all the time. It was so nice. As about the communication, actually, I have to say that in Estonian media it was quite nicely highlighted, but you know, for the remaining world, the Estonian language might be a little bit challenging to understand. But the good message which I was actually taking from that is that maybe from small countries with languages which are not easy to understand for other countries, there might be a good mechanism actually how to pass this kind of information to EAZA to spread the news further on. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'm sorry that I singled out Tallinn. Our collaboration indeed is extremely good, and you are a very trusted partner in our Birded Vulture EP, and we would like that to continue for many years. I think communication is really important. It's a role for national partner organizations. If one zoos has got a story about Birded Vulture, you can actually communicate to all the others, and yourselves do communication about it at regional level, EAZA, without any doubt. I've got one comment about that, a practical comment. Birded Vulture EP, we have got wonderful contact with the bird curator or with the birds of prey curator, which are really informed on a very detailed and regular level about in situ successes. So, you know, all these figures that I've presented are sent to your curators. Now, I feel, and I might be wrong, but I feel that one of the problems is that the bird curators or the birds of prey curators might not necessarily pass the information to the communication officers, or if they pass the information to the communication officers, might not be valued or prioritized. So maybe the challenge or the question I would like to launch to you is, how can we improve the communications between the EP members and bird curators and the communication officers so that really these success stories are disseminated in the most effective way?
Thank you.
John, maybe I missed in your presentation, but maybe you told, but I still want to ask. You explained to us the system that people can apply for the research. Is there, do they get money for that, or do they get support, or how's that working?
Do you mean money for the people who are applying, or the office? No, there's no money in it. It's literally applying. We have a facility where people can. We're monitoring the research that comes through. We're providing a level of what is good and what's not at the end of the day. So people, and particularly organisations that have small places and they don't have research officers or departments, we provide that extra facility to say whether it's a reasonable project or not.
Thank you. We will be wrapping up soon, so I'd like to give the floor to you to maybe 2 or 3 final questions.
Yeah. Klaus Winnemann from Heidelberg, Germany. I will try to be untypically clear and direct. In the outside world, we experience at the moment that people are not content with the classical political structures. Let's say Fridays for Future, but also in quite a lot of countries that they say we want to have more direct democracy. I experience EAZA as has nearly no direct democracy. Is it something we could be brave enough for the future?
That's a big one. I think it provides food for thought, but we'll probably not be able to explore this question in this session. Thank you. David.
Thank you. As we have the Foreign Ministry of EAZA here, and José as well, and I wanted to take advantage of the fact that José is here to ask this question. You were talking about communications, but you were also talking about lobbying and the work that the National Associations Committee does. José, I know that you had a long fight with EU governments about diclofenac and how that goes on. And I wanted to get a picture from you about how you see the lobbying role of zoos at CITES, at international bodies, at BES, etc., as being helpful in your work, and if there's something more that we could do. And from the National Associations Committee members, do you feel that the lobbying work that you can do can be more strategically helpful to conservation projects such as the VCF?
Well, thank you. I think lobbying works if you unite and work together. So you need to work together with conservation organizations, in particular large ones like WWF and BirdLife. We don't have a presence in Brussels. You do, EAZA does. And it's more effective if you find common platforms and common objectives and push together in the same direction. The problem is they might look at you and say, why are we working with those guys? Those are not conservation people. We've got different agendas. And that's where the point I made about reintroduction, restocking, real in situ successes comes through. If you have a portfolio of those in your sleeve, we say, well, you might have got some ideas about zoos being, but look at that. We are this as well. We are birded vulture conservation. We are with you. And that's why it is important to invest in these successful reintroduction and restocking projects, and then work all together. There's a lot of things that you can work together with conservation organizations on diclofenac, on CITES, and so on. Diclofenac, just 1 minute, just to give you an update. The drug was authorized in Europe. We thought it would be catastrophic because it could happen the same situation as in India. 99% decline. We've campaigned to ban it. The European Union and national government's position is that systems in Europe are completely different and they work in the sense that it's very regulated, the supplementary feeding sites and all the veterinary regulations, and their attitude was that unless there is a smoking gun, they will not change it. What we've been looking is for that smoking gun, but I have to say that after a few years of doing analysis on the ground on carcasses and on dead vultures, we have not yet found one dead vulture with diclofenac. So for the moment it looks like the European Union and the national government's position is holding. We have to give them credit where due, but we need to keep being vigilant and doing necropsies and toxicological analysis, because we know that if we find the first vulture with dead by diclofenac in Europe, then things might change, and then maybe the European Union will act differently. So far, the drug is still allowed. It's being used in Spain, in Italy, but in a very controlled and very, very regulated, and it looks like, as the European Union told us, it is preventing it from going into the vulture food chain.
Thank you. So I have a statement towards it, which is the world is in crisis. For example, bringing it back to Klaus, we have climate change, we have biodiversity crisis, and we are part of the solution. So this is our mantra. We are part of the solution, we as zoos. And of course, we need to communicate that. And EAZA and the national associations have realized that we need other tools and other communities. So the National Associations Committee was invented, for example, or the national associations themselves look how they collaborate and how they talk to politicians or talk to ministries or implementers. And for this, you need a different communication tool than if you talk to a visitor or the general public. So this is quite my ask to EAZA and to all of us, that we invent these tools and say we are relevant. You can ask us, you can trust in us because we have scientific evidence what we are saying. We have the species, we still have the individuals of species that have gone in the wild. And while communicating this, we make us more relevant in day-to-day policy. And I think that's important, that we find the tools how to communicate with a selected group of politicians, of decision makers.
I'm Cesare Vesani from Parco Natura Viva. First of all, thank you, José, because for me it was the first time this year that I've experienced of a reintroduction of birded vulture in Andalusia. And I have to say to everybody that the experience was really great, not just for the zoological aspect, but also because I met fantastic people, both in the management of Sierra Cazorla National Park, that is one of the biggest in Europe, but also because they engaged me and all the local community just before the releasing process. And I have to say, it was a great experience. So thank you, José, for this. That it was a first time for us. For the national represented national association, I'd like to ask, you have already answered a part of this. Do you have a regular relationship with authority in terms of what you are doing, not just for inspection or for the defense aspect, but also for the active achievements in terms of conservation that you have? Do you have a regular meeting with authority just to inform what you are doing, first? Second is, which policy about bed zoos that you have?
Is it? Yeah. Right. Thank you. So, as you may know, VDZ is only for 4 years now within the capital of Germany, starting with that. But we have, of course, we have zoos in Vienna, Schönbrunn, and in Bern as well. So we try to, in the German speaking area, we try to exchange, of course, there. And I would wish that these collaborations getting stronger, for example, to the Ministry for Environment, where we have good contacts and we are regularly invited to meetings. Let's say if there are NGO meetings on a particular topic like CITES, VDZ is invited on a regular basis. And we have that with the Ministry for Agriculture as well. So we are invited on a regular basis there as well. But we wish to have even more stronger links. And I address this question then to Tomasz, of course, to Brussels. And the second question, I first would like to answer. Our standpoint towards bad zoos, I think it's quite clear. So we are lucky that we are in the unity of the EAZA zoos, and many of the VDZ zoos are EAZA as well. And we are quite clear to the ministry that we, as VDZ, are not representing all the zoos, which is about 600 in Germany. We only represent 56 of them, which is 10%, and we cannot advocate for the others. So we have to draw the line there.
Yeah, I can add the Dutch situation. We have on a regular basis meetings with the government, with the policymakers, but also with the part of the government that has to check if we fulfill all the requirements. Always when there are questions in the ministry or in the parliament, then they call me and ask me, what do we have to answer? So we have a very good contact with them. And it's hard working because many times people change there. So you always have to go back and keep in contact with them. In the Netherlands, we have the system when zoos are accredited by the government for the they need their accreditation. Then there is a committee that controls those zoos, and that committee is almost exists. All the members of that committee are old NVD people. So they are very experienced, and for example, Mario is one of them, and I'm quite sure that zoos are closed or don't get their permit. Is that correct, Mario? Sorry. Okay. So that's the situation in the Netherlands.
Just to add a short comment from the EU perspective, Cesare. So in Brussels, the policy is created, but it's prepared by the member states. And the work of the National Associations Committee confirms that our national associations work with their governments not only on the licensing, like you asked, but also on showing the potential of zoos related to all different topics in biodiversity, be it solving invasive alien species problem. I know that particularly the Italian Association has very good credit and experience there, and many other issues on which sometimes we are not seen as the immediate partner in that, but when we enter that area and the decision makers realize our expertise, that always opens fantastic opportunities for collaboration. I think we had one more comment from the panel.
Very short. The situation in Slovak and Czech Republic is very similar to Germany. Our zoos are licensed by governments of past republic too, and our specialists or colleagues are very often in the state commissions. Is very strong cooperation with not only with Ministry for Agriculture, for Environment, but for Agriculture too. For example, this last month we was by the discuss about the change of law in Slovakia. From this month it's not possible have the animals in the circus. In Czech Republic is discuss about the zoo directive of Czech Republic, and we are in very good contacts with authorities past countries.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid the time is up. This session was called Building Partnerships for Nature, and when we chose the title months ago, we had no idea what the next EAZA vision will sound like. Now we know that actually building partnerships for nature is something that most of you would like to be reflected in the next vision. And so it will not only be the topic of many more panels like this, I'm sure, but this will be basically the leitmotif for what EAZA does. So I look forward to being part of it, and this concludes the session. So I would like to ask you to join me in giving a big round of applause for our panel. Thank you very much for your contributions. And thank you all for your attention, attendance, and questions. Thank you.